Welcome back. Let's get some sketching done. I'm going to work in the sketchbook with pen and ink and do a little head study. All right, here we go. A little warm-up sketch. So as I'm sketching these things, sketching anything, I'm looking at it in a gridded way. What I mean by that is I compare it to perfect vertical. The head's almost perfectly vertical. The chin actually pushes out a little bit off the vertical. And then I look at it as a straight on view, and of course it's more of a 3/4 view. It's going this way. So I'm looking at it from a perfectly squared off position and then comparing it, the reality of the pose, to that. Just like I'm going to look at the face or head or whatever, but let's say the face shape as a egg, and then I'll decide whether I should make something a little different. Maybe a tube would serve me better. Maybe a pill shape would serve me better, and so on. So compare it to an ideal is basically what we're doing. We're looking at it as an ideal kind of, what's the word? I can't think of the word. It'll come to me later. But anyway, compare it to that ideal and then see how it is varying off that. That way you're not making an assumption. If you don't do that, you're going to make her look too much straight on and make it, as I did, too much of a perfect vertical. And then you miss that dynamic positioning, a dynamic relationship or set of relationships. It's really is where most of or much of the beauty is going to be wrapped up in, probably. She's got these great eyebrows. I love the whole setup. She's got that kind of quirky cartoon expression to her. She's actually a terrific actress in that sense. I don't know if she can do Lady Macbeth, but she can certainly bring some personality into these poses, which is great. So in each bit I draw, like that eye socket, a little bag under her eye, a little bit of the lid and the iris, so on. But I'm looking for the connection. I'm drawing one thing and then seeing, in this case, how the eyebrow goes into that bridge of the nose. She's got this wonderful dip down, kind of this ski slope nose, as we call it. Bob Hope had that old movie star and comic. And she's got this really great, rather than a typical Roman nose, this dip and bump off the jump, which is just terrific. So what I'm doing is I'm looking how one thing is going to relate to the other. So I draw this side, I'm going to see how it relates to the other. I may do a construction line to connect them, I may not, but I'm always visualizing that. We're looking for, as artists, our job is to look for the connectivity of things, how things fit together, how they relate together. And it's that making sense of the senseless, organizing it in values and shapes and rhythms and whatever. I'm going to give her a little bit of a cockeyed look with that other eye there. And then as I draw the top of this structure using the eyebrow rather than the eye socket, I'm going to use that as the top of this eye structure. And then I'm going to relate it to the bottom. I'm going to relate this to that. And so I'm constantly saying, how does it relate? Whatever I'm doing, how does it relate this way? How does it relate that way? And seeing the dynamic relationship, the similarity and the difference, and balancing that out. And she's got a fairly long stretch from the bottom of the nose to the upper lip. I'm going to stretch that a little bit longer. And she's got kind of the pursed lips, so I'm going to give her a little smaller mouth, just for fun. Give it a little bit of a caricature. As I say often in class situations and teaching situations, the best portrait artists in history were caricature artists. They would take the characteristics, the deep socket, the long neck, the bushy eyebrows, whatever it is, and they would exaggerate that in some way. Now, if you're doing a true caricature, you're going to exaggerate it in a comic way. They would do it in an august way, in a flattering. These are important shapes because this is an important person. There's dignity to these structures, to these proportions. There's elegance. And say the great ones like the Van Dycks and early Rembrandts, Sargent, of course. All these guys would bring that gravitas to it. Usually you're painting someone, if it's a portrait, someone who's important because they're paying you for it. Not always. But Sargent would do portraits of the country folk around Spain and such. But typically you're going to give them a flattering depiction. So you're going to look for shapes that flatter, that suggests flattering adjectives: strength, power, patience, charisma, whatever it is. In this case, I'm not doing that. It's quite a silly setup here in a good way. And so I'm going to play that up a little bit. As I said, making that eyeball go this way a little bit for the fun of it. Give her a little bigger, fuller chin. She's got that wonderful jawline coming down and missing the chin and moving into the neck this way, and then the chin picks up well above that. And it's she's got a strong, real strong chin. Kind of gives that Nordic feeling that the little silly Viking cap punctuates. So I'm going to play up that width to the chin just because. Now some of this goings on in the brow, the corrugator muscles, which give you that furrowed brow when you're angry or perplexed. This wonderful rhythm going up over that raised eyebrow. I'm going to pick those up, and so what I'm looking for is how that eyebrow with the eye socket plays, as I said, dot, 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 plays from top to bottom, this whole structure here, not truly an eye socket, a little more than that, but call it the socket area, and then how that plays back up, let's say, into the furrowed brow. So now we're coming up into here, bottom bag under the lid to the upper lid, bottom bag into the eyebrow, bottom bag into the furrowed brow. All these then become arrows that take you around one way or the other. And then when you go off that nose, so all these things are, I think of them as a roller coaster ride. You do the loop-de-loop and then you take off down the track to the next adventure, the next fun moment, thrill part of the ride. And that's what we're doing here. We pick up that structure, we spend time in that, and then we slingshot out of that. Or if you want to slow down that slingshot, you can move down this way. But I'm always looking for the out. So I'm going to bring a little hatching there to pull me down into the mouth and into the chin. And the chin's going to mirror what the jowl area did. And then I'm using did that to play up that zigzag idea. So now we're going to move down that a little slower. And at this point, and for this sketch, the life of the sketch, it will be just hatching to give us the value of the shadow, not any of the information in there, the detail in there. I don't care about these little sketches. But what I will do is pick up a little bit of the cheekbone there. That eye's going a little crazy there, so we'll now that neck, that side of the neck comes down around the jowl area in here and bumps along the braid. This goes down that way. And then this is taking me right out, and we actually come out of the shadows into the halftone. Comes right out. So notice how all of these things are little visual arrows. Every time we get a pinching structure, a contour, a shape of shadow, think of it as an arrow if you can. If it just does this, can't really make an arrow. But if it's grouping with several things, like all the braids, that becomes an arrow too. So all these things are directional. And that keeps the story moving. That's what makes the novel a page turner, is you're moving through the plot. You're moving from one moment to the next, and one moment, even if it's a surprise, logically and inevitably feels like it had to go to that next point. That's what we want with our drawing and our painting and our sculpture too. Okay, let's give her those horns. And for these sketches, the age-old strategy, which means it's something that everybody's done forever, which means it might be something that you want to change, but I typically do not, is you just let the shadows have little or no form. You mark off a few details like an ear in there, but you don't get into the reflected light and all the nuances as you would in a tight portrait. That can absolutely be a choice you don't make, but that's a quick shorthand. It's a great way to simplify things. What it does is it focuses you on the light or the border between shadow and light. You start seeing these shapes where light meets shadow. If I have lots of detail, it tends to be in the lights. Things in the shadows are just suggested, more drawn than rendered. To give that. And you can do little tricks like more detail in things that are closer to you, less detail that things are farther away. That will help it fade back into the kind of the foggy atmosphere in a sense. So there's all sorts of little tricks you can do. And that's one of the great pleasures of sketching. And I love it, just love to sketch, is that you can kind of experiment with how to have something unfinished, how to give it a sense of completeness, and yet it's not complete, it's not finished. And if you're going to be any kind of painterly artist, if you're going to be a realist but show brush strokes, then that's going to be an unfinished rendering, basically. It's not going to fool the eye. And so how do you leave it unfinished, where you're showing brush strokes or line, which does not exist in nature? How are you going to do that and still make it feel satisfying, feel like it's not a story without an ending? So there's all sorts of tricks and techniques to that, but playing with them in the sketch stage is a lot of fun. And so one of the things that's kind of a traditional trope of realism, of sketching realism, going way back to the high Renaissance, really, is letting the shadows have less information than the light. In European art, there was a real religious meaning to that. Let there be light. There was enlightenment. You see that in Rembrandt's work, where the light is religious. So there's some of that, but also it's just in the shadows, if you go down early in the morning to the kitchen to get a glass of water, you can't see very well because there's not much light, and so the detail is reduced or gone. But you turn on those lights, you see everything clearly. So it's the way the eye works too. All right, that was our little sketch of our Viking lady. So I hope that was fun, playing with those shapes. So it's nice to go into sketchbook drawings with a purpose, have kind of a plan sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, where you can take it in a certain direction, and we did that this time. So we will see you next time.